What is up, guys? JR Juggernaut 1 is here, and back with another video for you guys. This video, I'm going to be talking about two things. The first thing I want to talk about briefly, because I want to get this out of the way, is the new regional schedule. For those of, I'm going to leave a link to this in the description below. There's there's an updated regional list, regional schedule that was posted on the Konami's website. Personally, I wasn't expecting to actually see this for at least a few more weeks, so I'm actually relieved to be seeing it now, because I'm already starting to plan out with the regionals. For those of you who are curious about it, they're like, for at least from a New Yorker's perspective, if you guys are, well, I would say if you're not looking to go farther than, I would say, an hour and a half out of your way, there's 4 regionals coming up that are going to be good for you. I'm going to most likely only 2 of them right now, but unfortunately that's just how it is. The first one will be happening September 9th at King's Games, if you in Brooklyn, New York, if you guys are near there. The place, I will admit, is a bit sketchy, and though what you have to worry about is, you definitely have to worry about getting your stuff stolen there. It's, you know, and it is a pretty difficult regional, I would say. They have more of a limit on the amount of players they can get, so you have to get there early. But you know, aside from those little things, or mostly little things, I still recommend going there. Just, you know, watch your stuff. That's all I'm going to say. The next regional after that is going to be in a place called Toy Was in Nanuet, New York, I believe it's pronounced. I could be wrong here. Forgive me. September 22nd, which, quite honestly, this is one of the 2 regionals that are happening that I'm not going to, are not because they're too far out of my way. As I said, I could go. The problem is, these are the 2 weekends right before my LSAT, and it's too close for me to unfortunately say it would be a wise idea for me to go, which I hate to say, but yeah, my LSAT is obviously more important. The reason I want to go to the September 9th one, though, is because it's far enough away from my LSAT where I should be okay. But unfortunately, this one is the 22nd, 2 weeks beforehand. And the next one, which is in Gaming ETC in Stratford, Connecticut, which is a pretty reasonable distance if you're from Long Island or New York City, that is happening the 30th, the week after. But like I said, unfortunately, for me, I can't go because that's the week before my LSAT. I'm taking it out Saturday, October 6th. So that's gonna be a bit difficult. What was the other thing? Oh yes, and then the last one, because I haven't seen any nearby ones from October, sadly, is going to be one at King's Games again, November 4th. Once again, this one is one I'm most likely going to. I can't say I'm definitely going to really any of these, but the September 9th one is dependent on where I'm at with my studies, and the November 4th one is pretty definite, provided that nothing else is going on that weekend, but I don't expect anything to be happening, at least right now. I think that's pretty much it with everything. If you guys, like I said, go check out the list if you want to see what's going on for yourself. But I'm honestly just pretty excited, and the one thing you'll notice about this is that there's no regionals happening until the weekend of YCS Toronto, which is both good and bad, obviously. Those who are going to the YCS are going to obviously miss out. So, quite frankly, if you if you're going to one of those regionals that weekend, good for you. You might have just gotten your lucky break. Yeah. The only downside is that, you know, we're not gonna have an idea of like the meta until, you know, we have to wait for the ban list still before we can even plan out what decks we're gonna run. But considering how bad this format is, it's like, who cares? The big thing for us is that we definitely want to have some sort of an idea of what the meta's like. And thankfully, because YCS Toronto will be the week before the first regional, September 9th, that's going to be very informative. But while it won't necessarily, we'll hopefully get an idea of what decks people are going to be successful, but also an idea of, but not too much to the point where, you know, it's decided what all the meta decks are. You know, we're just kind of hoping for that. So yeah, I probably spent too much time talking about this regional schedule. Like I said, link below. The real thing I want to talk about is the format. the problems with the format, and this is going to be a rant. So I apologize in advance for this if I get a little repetitive, or if I, just go off on too many tangents. The main reason I'm talking about this is because I want to hear from you guys in a sense about this. What do you guys think what do you guys think of the format? Please answer this in the comments below. What do you think of this format? And if you think it's bad, really bad like I do, what do you think, why do you think that's the case? Now, okay. The problem... Alright, excuse me for a second. Okay. The problem I'm having with the format right now is the fact that it's so, derpy, but in the worst ways. Okay. Let's think about this for a second. Okay. This format is, normally I'm all for diversity and such. I'm always a fan of that. But the problem I'm having with the format right now, the biggest problem, the biggest problem I'm having at this point is just the fact that it's all about, it's every single deck is fairly autopilot. That's pretty apparent, from my standpoint. But it's let's face it. We have these 4 decks that are pretty obviously the dominant 4 decks of this current format. They're the best decks. We can't really dispute that. And it's pretty crazy because the problem is that all these decks, they're so linear in the sense that they win by just making really overpowered plays through the use of 1 to 2 cards. The problem is it's so easy for you to you don't even have to commit, you don't even have to worry about committing your resources, because usually you could just commit 1 to 2 cards knowing okay, I have hardly anything to lose. There's nothing you really have to think about, and that is frustrating. Oh my god. I don't know, and the problem but the part about it that's bothering me is it's so frustrating in how you lose. It's all these decks, they have their 2 card plays or 1 card play that just says I win, and I hate that so much right now, because we obviously it shouldn't be that every deck has a win condition that's so easily attainable. I want to compare this in a way to X-Saber Cat format and Synchro Cat. These were decks that were just all about getting to your big plays and OTKs. But the thing about those decks was those decks were kind of worse in terms of the mirror match, because you just find yourself unable to come back from Rescue Cat, Vulture, just a huge slew of monsters. It's really difficult to come back from that. People will tell you that. Especially when they go Cold Wave, Rescue Cat, Gunlight, blah, 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 blow up your back row. It's crazy. Do I even have to, to talk further? I understand I'm kind of rambling here. But that's, the problem. We're just facing, we have to, it's not so much that we need a format like Go Control, which is so slow paced. We need a format where you don't win simply because of 1 card that you drew, and played and just was able to resolve. That's one of the things, and that's why when I talk about my ban list discussion, I will make it clear as to what I think both will happen, but also what needs to happen, but is unlikely to be dealt with, at least right now. But the reason the other thing I'm going to get to later is having to do with people's ignorances towards the issue, and that's what's probably my biggest frustration in this whole thing. The problem that we're having with our format, Rabbit, they go Rabbit into lag. It's what are you gonna? You can't come back if you don't have the Veiler. okay, you're done. If, let's see, especially if they have the macro and you're playing something like dragons, you are literally screwed, I'm pretty sure. Literally screwed. Then I think the only other, I'm trying to think, is there any other card I can think of? With dragons, they can just overextend, and usually they won't have to worry about the field, because if they have torrential, and you're still able to get out your pulsar, you're fine. I mean, obviously without priority, that's not as true as it was before. But then of course you have Inzectors, they just go pop your cards. That deck, what makes that deck so horrible is that it punishes you for playing cards. You literally have to be like, okay, I'm only going to play one card per turn, just so if my opponent wants to keep recycling their combos, they can't just destroy. They don't have the option to destroy 2 of my cards to make that happen. They have to destroy something else. And then if they ultimately have the OTK ready, it's just like, doesn't even matter. Oh, freaking joy. And then of course windups have their loop, and it's just all their ways of simply making all these Enmadian exploding onto the field. Do I even need to continue with this? No, not really. But the part that bugs me, I think, the most is that when people talk about their with fixing this format, that people react so stupidly to it. I'm a fan of altrealitygames.com, and while I don't think these are necessarily the best articles ever written, I at least appreciate the fact that the people who write on these articles know exactly what they're talking about, and especially with people like Joe Orlando and Patrick Hoban, they make sense in a lot of their articles. Okay, Patrick Hoban, I'll admit, I don't always agree with, but they at least, their articles, what they say actually makes sense and sounds legitimate. Recently, those two people, and Paul Clark, aka Serious Treeborn Frog, a guy that I personally hold in high regard as Yu-Gi-Oh players, because he's, he gets a lot of good deck profiles. He's a very nice guy to talk to. But he also knows his stuff. Just that simple. Paul started by posting an article about what he thought was going to be like a likely ban list for next format. I couldn't believe how stupid people were being, the way they were reacting. They called the ban list crazy for all these reasons. They basically just said, you know what, I'm going to find a comment that I can read to you, just for the sake of humor, because, oh my god. He was like, first off, one person said, yeah, I stopped at MST to 1. There are too many powerful trap cards nowadays to justify that. It's annoying when people are just like, I'm not going to read because I saw this one thing that I don't like. It's their opinion, damn it, and it's not something like crazy, and just something that makes no sense. Putting MST to 1, in my opinion, is okay. Personally, I'd rather them just put it at 2, because then you don't have to have the whole 3 MS, because that's fair. But I don't like the idea of MST at 3. At least at 1 we can live. There are other cards that can replace the whole spell trap destruction. I don't understand why MST needs to be at 2. Needs to be at 2 or 3. I think it's ridiculous. Here's the thing. Terrible list. I'm sorry, but you slaughtered way too many decks, even ones that do not deserve list attention at all. Stratos to 0, come on. Okay. This is the other thing that really gets under my skin. The fact that people simply argue that a deck doesn't deserve treatment because it hasn't had much success in the format. I disagree with that logic wholeheartedly. I'll admit, it may not deserve as much attention as other cards do, obviously. That's completely legitimate. But to say it's the kind of card that... But if you say that it deserves, absolutely more... that it deserves, 0 attention, because of that, it is just absolutely ridiculous. Okay. Dark World still needs to be hit. It's still an unfair deck. I don't care what people say. I don't care that it hasn't been doing very well competitively. it's still an unfair deck. What more do you need? Secondly, Heroes, for example, they still might deserve a hit even though they haven't made much of an impact here either. They did win Japan Nationals, and they could very well do well at Worlds, even if that really actually has no impact on the ban list. My point being, I could easily see them doing something on the list, and so I'm honestly nervous because I don't want to commit to Heroes just yet, knowing that, that this could very well, the banning of Stratos could very well happen as Paul predicts here. But it's, people shouldn't be reacting like list is terrible because this is his opinion. Don't view a list as terrible. Respect people's opinions. That's it. I just can't believe people sometimes. It is utterly astounding to me. Another comment I want to show you was one that was posted on Patrick Hoban's list. One that literally made me laugh and cry at the same time. Okay. The only reason people don't like today's meta is because they are sore losers. The meta is not that bad, and we need different play styles in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is what makes it diverse. Bad ban lists, just like all the others. I'm going to read you what I said to him in response because of how annoyed I was. I mean, I don't really care, but I don't really care, like, if he disagrees. If you're going to disagree, actually not be a dumbass when you write. Actually, the problem with this format is the fact that top decks are so unbalanced in how easily they can overpower the opponent through the combination of 1 to 2 cards. The answer isn't to adapt and play differently, it's to make these decks less unbalanced. If we had your attitude with every format, then Yu-Gi-Oh! Would be dead right now because the format would continue to be unfair and unbalanced. You are clearly an idiot who is so ignorant that you cannot see this is the right kind of ban list. The other worst part about this is people don't realize that a lot of the stuff that people write, some of these lists aren't predicted as the actual lists. But either way, they would be good lists. People assume that because you're hitting all these decks, it's terrible. They're not killing these decks. They're making them less unfair. They're still playable in what they're doing. It's just that simple. But people can't seem to accept the fact that maybe Dark World isn't playable without if Graph was at 1. But I still would argue that a lot of these decks would still be playable even if you hit certain parts of the deck. It's alright, I'm going to try and calm this down, but essentially all I'm saying is I hope you guys are not as ignorant as these people are, because it's just really astounding at how dumb people talk and write on the internet. And it's really sad how much negative feedback these ban lists got, all because people disagree with their perspectives, and all because they think that, and not even that, but people think it's just bad for them to be doing this much, to be making this many changes. Don't even get me started. Either way, guys, I hope you enjoyed this list. Sorry, what am I saying list for? I hope you enjoyed this video. I will try to get more stuff if it's done in the future. Near future, maybe later today, we'll see what happens, but I have to go. Tell me what you guys think about this in the comments. This is probably a very long vid, so hopefully you sat through it all, and I'll see you next time.